Well, thank you, Terry. We're in for a rare treat today. Mike Gregory, of course, most of you already received the introductory material about Mike Gregory, I believe, by email. Is that correct? Um, but Mike is a rare, rare talent. He's smart, he's deep, he's experienced. Most important of all, he's helpful. I've had the privilege of knowing Mike Gregory from the Minnesota Speakers Association and, of course, in the Optimist group. Uh, Mike entered the world and learned about collaboration early on uh, because he had a twin brother uh, and then had four siblings and well educated, bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, experienced in the field, which is the ultimate measure in my mind. Uh, Someday, we don't have enough time now because we want to hear Mike Gregory, but someday you should spend some time with him and learn about all of the places that he has served other people. He's an author. He's 25 years in management, written 35 articles, 12 books, etc. And his focus is on collaboration, particularly collaborating so we can deal with conflict. And with that, I simply give you Mike Gregory. You're in for a treat.
Well, thank you very much, Manny, for that very nice introduction. And I would ask Terry, could you give me screen sharing, please, so I could bring up the PowerPoint here? And while he does that and I bring this up, I'll just ask you a couple questions. Is conflict blocking your results? Would you be more collaborative with others? Would that help you? If you were more collaborative with others, would that help you going forward? And if the answer to that is yes, it would, or you think sometimes conflict is maybe blocking your results, and I want you to think about conflict blocking your results on a personal note, on a professional note, on the way you interact with others, and the implications that might have with others. And I'm going to focus a little bit today, as you think about conflict with others, is not just business and community, but I'm going to talk about reds and blues. And there's a lot of conflict in our nation right now relative to reds and blues. So I'll get into that here as well. And I would encourage you, you may want to pull out a pen and paper and maybe jot down a few things, because this is a pretty content-rich presentation, but you may have 1, 2, or 3 action items that you might be able to apply going forward. So with that in mind, I'll start off by just verifying with you. As Manny said, I'm a twin brother. That's Mike on the left, that's Mark on the right, and I can tell you, being the 4th and 5th children, there aren't a whole lot of pictures, so it's not in the greatest focus, but we have a local football coach, and he uses a phrase which is row the boat. So I gotta give Fleck the, EJ Fleck the trademark that he owns that. But I want to tell you that a long time ago, my mom took a look at this and said, this is how we work together. This is how we move together going forward, is we're going to row the boat. So that's Mike on the left again and Mark on the right. And today in our presentation, and just bear with me here a little bit. There we go. I want to give credit to some people. One of the folks is on the line with us. Erica Garms is someone who wrote the book, The Brain-Friendly Workplace, PhD, University of Minnesota, and lots of insights, and I've gained a lot from her. John Molitor is the Associate Dean, Michigan State University Medical School, and I spent a day looking at brain scans and learning things from him. Rick Hansen is from the University of California. They have what's called the Greater Good Science Center. And that's a great source if you want to learn some things about neuroscience that are in terms that you and I can understand. And I'm not a neuroscientist, but I've been working with them now for 9 years and learning things. And that's a great source. And last but not least is my friend, Dr. Terry Wu. He's here, and I'm going to give him some credit with a commentary on a slide of something he shared with us last week that I want to share with you too. Now, as I'm running through these slides and you see me moving around a little bit, I want to just share with you that my power went out this morning as far as the internet, completely down, cable and everything. So I'm at my son's house and I'm using his office and I'm using his mouse and I'm working with this mouse. I'm not as skilled at this as I might be. So bear with me as I'm working through this process. I want to share some things just about neuroscience, just some general things. That's the amygdala, sometimes referred to as the reptilian brain. It's at the top of the brain stem. And there are two elements there about the size of your thumbnails or a couple of almonds. And that's the part that when you start to get angry, you can flood. It's called flooding, when you flood various chemicals through your bloodstream. And it just takes 6 to 10 seconds to flood. And we've all flooded. We've all gotten angry at one time or another. And when we've done that, we've lost control. Well, what stops us from flooding? And what stops us from flooding is the prefrontal cortex. This is about 5% of the brain mass, but about 25% of the energy. So if my boss says something to me and I'm frustrated by it, I'm also thinking, well, I look for food, water, shelter, and sex. And if I get mad at my boss and say things back to my boss, I might lose those. I could lose my job. I could not get as good of assignments. I could lose the bonus at the end of the year. So although your amygdala says, I'm angry right now, you kick in with your prefrontal cortex and say, I better not say something or do something now. But we might lose that with others. And when you think about conflict with others, it's the prefrontal cortex that has allowed us to not lose our temper with other people. Okay. And again, bear with me. Now I'm going to talk about reds and blues and implicit bias. I've gone through training in the course of the past month with 3 2-hour sessions with a person named Kimberly Papillon. And she has been working with the Michigan State Bar Association in addressing elements of implicit and explicit bias. And there's some things that she's brought up that were entirely new to me. It's referred to as a VMPFC. This is what we can use to overcome implicit bias. And she was commenting that things that we can do is if we think of good memories, think of someone who's a friend of you when you were in grade school, your best friend. How about high school? How about in college? And how much you appreciated that person. And now as you think about others, and you think about where they might have a view different from you. Now I'm focusing on the reds and blues. And if you put yourself as being the attorney that's got to represent the other side. So if you're a blue, think about what the reds are going to say, and you've got to represent them in court. What are they going to say, and how can you defend them? So you've thought about things they're going to say and what they're going to say. But now we come back and we reflect on these folks who were friends of ours in grade school, in high school, in college. And now what I want to do is I want to invite that other person into my environment. So if we think of that, that's a way we can address implicit bias that we may have with others. So think of positive expectations, history, and values. And values is really the key here. And there's a particular test that was done, and you can pull this up on the internet. If you put broccoli versus carrots in neuroscience, and they went ahead and showed people pictures of folks like them. So I'm a white guy. So they showed pictures of white people. And then they showed pictures of black people. And your brain registered that the white people are people you associate with and you're closer to. And the black people are people who I don't associate with as much, and that went to a different part of the brain. It was an implicit bias recognition. But then they told these people, what I want you to do with each picture is just ask yourself a question. Do they eat carrots or broccoli? Which would this person prefer? And by simply asking that question, the part that went to the negative disappeared. The folks were able to look at that person more as a person. So when I talk about elements of implicit bias, and again, this neuroscience is rapidly changing. It's exponentially changing. This is something I just learned in the last few weeks. And it's not that this is the answer to all, but it just points out to us we can work on improving our implicit bias. In particular, if we do things to interact with others that are different from ourselves, and if we do things like meditate to clear out that prefrontal cortex so we can be more at peace with others, this will help. And then I'm just counting the negative bias down here. Down here, the DMPFC, that's the part that allows us to look at folks negatively. And if we have ultimatums and negative experiences, that all tie into that. The insula is another element. It's not with the DMPFC, but when you smell something and you go, oh, that's terrible, you remember that, and your brain remembers that. That same area is where we have our negative bias back in here with this DMPFC. Okay. But if we think about now others in whom we love, or others in whom we have to interact with, it's not about me. It's all about we, but it starts with me. And I'm going to bring that up with the category of listening. It's not about me. It's all about we. It starts with me. And it's the listening. We need to start the action of listening to the other person first. When someone's been heard, they're far more apt to want to listen to you. And when I think about, and when I think about elements of a child, and I brought in elements here of brain science with neuroscience, it turns out when a woman gives birth, that's the maximum time of oxytocin. Maximum time of oxytocin when that woman gives birth. There are no studies on men, but I can tell you from my own perspective, I was there when my first child was born. And I can tell you that was the highest high I ever had in my life. So I'm just focusing, the powers of what these chemicals can do in the brain can be extremely powerful. And I'm just trying to, oh shoot. Bear with me, not my mouse. And there we go. But my thing is collaboration. And when you think about collaboration, collaboration is not just communication when we communicate with each other. Collaboration means we have a goal. We're trying to do something together. We realize we're better when we work with someone else to get something done. So when you think about conflicts, a conflict where we have different opinions, but we're working with each other, this is a very positive thing. And collaboration is broken up into 3 different elements. And I'm a simple guy, so I like to work with 3s. And the first is connecting relationships. Now, when I talk about connecting relationships, this can be very simple. This can be the smile with somebody when you see them walking down the street. It can be the smile with someone you're at the airport, your flight's just been canceled. You got to work with the person up front at the ticket agent to get this squared away. You can be that friendly person. You're that optimist. We're in this optimist club. But it also can be just asking questions to have an emotional connection. I am happy we can share time today. What's been going on for you? What is most important to you that we talk about today? What have you been thinking about lately? You're building some relationship with them to let them talk and share things with you. I do mediations all over the country. I've done over 2,500 with up to Fortune 100 companies with billion-dollar issues, to mediations volunteering locally here in housing court, conciliation court, neighborhood disputes in public housing. I've mediated between gangs. That's all what I do for fun. That's my personal volunteering things that I like to do. But regardless of who this is, if I'm doing a mediation, I'm going to look up these people on LinkedIn and other social media. And I'm going to look them up in general with Google searches and things. And I'm going to learn all I can about them. And I'm also going to ask folks what they know about these people. And the reason is I want to find a way, if I can, to connect with them. And then the second step on the collaboration effect is listening actively. And listening actively, if I went into the chat and I said, give me words that you think involve listening, you know these things. You're all intelligent people. You wouldn't be where you are. You already have strong emotional intelligence. You have strong conversational intelligence and strong listening intelligence. But I'm listening actively. I'm saying, I want you to paraphrase, summarize, ask open-ended questions, not yes, no questions, and empathize with them. And empathy is very important. That means I'm putting myself in your shoes. I'm understanding you, and I'm letting and sharing with you the elements of how you're feeling. And then if I can get the mouse to move, bear with me. Then it's educating judiciously. And on educating judiciously, that means the way they want to be educated. With so many people, you have so much knowledge and you want to share all this knowledge with other people, right? Oh, I'm so smart and I just want to make you understand. But what it's about is asking yourself, what is it they want to know, and educating them judiciously. Now, I was an expert in court relative to business valuation in certain issues. And I've testified in U.S. tax court and prepared in U.S. district court and the U.S. federal court of claims, all in the federal jurisdictions. And I became a manager of a group. And with that group, we grew from 7 to 21 technical people, experts, in the course of 3 years. And then I managed this group for 7 years. And at any one time, we had 10 to 12 cases docketed somewhere in federal court around the country. And what we learned to do is always research the judge ahead of time and see the decisions the judge had made on similar issues. And there were things the judges would make, comments judges would make on the experts and on testimony and on certain approaches. And if it was an approach that we thought should be used and the judge said, I don't like that approach, we're going to take the time to say, in this case, this is why this approach is important, and educate the judge why the judge would want to make an exception in this case. Or if we don't need to use that approach, we won't use that approach because we don't want to antagonize the judge. So the collaboration effect is all about three things: connecting relationships, listening actively, and educating judiciously. And what this does, it leads to building bridges and negotiating closure. And isn't that what you want? You want to build a bridge with the other party, and you want to work towards something that we can collectively work on together and complete. Well, I just talked about empathy, and I said listen with empathy, but you want to lead with compassion and listen with empathy. This is something I picked up recently from Dr. Terry Wu. And if we think about this, compassion involves several things. Compassion involves being calm, confident, and competent. It involves our prefrontal cortex, and it doesn't come naturally. We actually have to learn compassion. You can actually go on the internet and put in compassion courses. You can pull up classes on compassion. Folks in medical school or in nursing school, they take courses on compassion. You don't want to have somebody who is going to be empathetic with you. Oops. You don't want to have, empathy is great for listening. So here we want to have an emotional tie-in. I feel your pain. I take actions based on how you feel, how I feel. And we all have natural empathy. If a baby hears parents arguing, the baby doesn't know what it is, but hears those loud voices, the baby will cry. That's a natural element. But compassion is something we have to learn. And it's something that is an extremely valuable element with respect to leading. So I have my first question for you. You can just answer this in your head. But the collaboration effect is all about A, doing it my way. B, connecting relationships, listening actively, and educating judiciously. C, communicating with others. Or D, making sure I am heard. As you think about those, which one do you think this is? The collaboration effect is all about, and hopefully as you look at that, you'll say it's about connecting relationships, listening actively, and educating judiciously. It's not about doing it my way. It's about more than communicating. Communicating just means we're having a discussion, but we're not working necessarily towards a goal. And it's not about making sure I'm heard. It's making sure the other person is heard and that you've listened to them and you've verified what their thoughts and concerns are. Well, we're optimists. So we all know about the Optimist Creed. Then we're going to talk about the 10 points at the end of the session here today. But studies have actually shown people who are optimistic, they live longer, they live healthier, they have better relations, they have higher incomes. This is actually elements you can pull up on the internet and it'll document this for you. But we don't want to be optimists just for the sake of being happy for happy, or set up goals for ourselves, or as the prayer said today, hope. We want to set up hope which is realistic and looks long term. Admiral Stockdale said the folks who died in Hanoi, in the Hanoi Hilton in North Vietnam, were the folks that said, we're going to be out of here by the 4th of July or by Christmas. They set up false hopes. And he said, we're going to get out of here someday. We need to stay focused. The key was keep hoping. Don't give up. We're all in this together. We need to have common goals. And that's what we're about here in the Optimist Club too. So when I think of us and optimists, I just want to share with you again, go back, and this is our mission. And you can see the key points associated with our mission here in the Optimist Club on providing hope, positive visions, and we're optimists. And our vision also says we give back to our community, don't we? We volunteer, and the focus is on children. And what Bill Klump brought up on saying we're going to have these sessions that we're going to work together with other organizations. And that's, again, part of collaboration. Look at how positive this is with what's happened with COVID-19. And the outreach here in our community of Roseville, when the Optimist Club and the Rotary Club and the Kiwanis Club and the Golden Corral of Kiwanis, the retirees in the Kiwanis Club, they all said we're going to work in our community to help build things better over this time period. And Terry can come back with how much money has been raised and given out, but it's significant. I don't know, $120,000, $140,000. And I
Say,
see what
Dave?
Bill's doing right now. I'm sorry, did you say something, Terry?
Yes, sorry, Mike. I think your slide is stuck. We're still seeing one from quite a ways back. We're
Oh,
seeing
shoot.
it's not all about me. Not about me.
Okay, shoot. I'm going to actually say, I'm going to pause. Again, I'm sorry, I'm not in my office. I lost my internet. I'm working with my son and his mouse. I'm at his home office. He's downstairs. I'm going to go grab him, bring him up here and see if we can unfreeze this. So
Okay.
I apologize for the technical difficulty. I'll be right back.
Okay.
And here we are collaborating together with the hope we're all going to get through this together. Okay.
Bingo.
Okay,
we
we've got a new slide
love,
now.
and hope?
Faith is hope. Let faith, love, hope. Yes.
Okay, I'm going to back up. And this is the Stockdale slide. This is our mission. So I was commenting and saying, note hope. Right on point with what Bill was saying. Note hope and positive vision. That's what we do as optimists. And note the volunteer organizations and what we do to help out children in our community. And then I'm coming back and saying, we've been to weddings and you've heard faith, love, and hope, and the greatest of these is love. And I'm going to say, as optimists, we're taking this from the perspective of we're going to use hope going forward. And this involves a whole host of different things. And these are just different elements that we are involved with as we collaborate and work with others. I'm not going to read these to you. Can you see these now, Terry?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. My son just came up and I gave him a thumbs up that I'm good on this end. He just got off what he was doing. Again, bear with me, everybody. We're getting there. Okay, these are all the different elements associated with this. And when you think of collaboration, think of our club, The Voices of Optimism, this book. This book is such a positive example of what we can do with collaboration. And having written 12 books, I know what's involved with writing a book and getting it published. And I think of what a club, what a group. Think what we've done collaboratively with this book, having read this recently with the book club of the Optimist Club. And I want to share another book with you. A friend of ours recently passed away, Tom Winninger, who spoke into this group. He's got this book, Your True DNA. And in that book, you're encouraged to write down your own statement of what are you. And this is me. I promote collaboration, helping others overcome their conflicts through mediation and inspiring firms to take advantage of collaboration so that they can grow, be more productive, and make a difference in the lives of others. We're trying to make this world a better place. And that's what we do as optimists. And when you think of, bear with me, when you think of this in terms of how we get there, it has everything to do with attitude. You're going to hear more about this from Mandy Stiles' book on listening. I'm going to bring this up. But attitude is a part of this basic structure and foundation of what's going to happen going forward. When you hear Dave Bartholomew say, Henry Ford made the comment, if you say it's going to work or we're going to get there, or you say it's not going to work and I can't get there, I'm paraphrasing. Either way, you're right, because your attitude is such a critical element towards what we're going to do. And think about that in terms of collaboration. And then we now know so much more about neuroscience that what goes in your head impacts your body. If you reflect, meditate, prayer, conduct yoga, you clear your prefrontal cortex, and that calms your breathing, that calms your heart, that makes you more at peace. And what goes in your body impacts your head. So when you think of going in your body, what you eat, what you drink, the exercise that you do, what you do with your body, that also impacts your head. And today we know so much more about this. This also impacts how we might be acting with others in terms of our relationships because of what's in our head and what we've done with our bodies. So now I have another question for you. And again, you can just answer this by looking at it and thinking about yourself. Which of the following is a positive stress outlet? Exercise and mindfulness, excess of drinking, excess of eating, or anger? And I know you know, it's exercise and mindfulness. But taking just 10 minutes a day, for example, for mindfulness of prayer or reflection, meditation, or yoga, it's been shown that in 21 days, you significantly can lower your blood pressure. Folks are calmer. They're calmer in their personal and professional relationships. And that can help you going forward here too. And then I want to take some lessons from the Optimist Club as I think about elements in 3 areas. And I gotta back this up. I'm sorry, working this mouse. Connecting relationships. Think of the speakers we have and the socialization that we do. And we're hoping we can get back together again and do that. And think of the book clubs that we have and the events that we do and giving back and how we help each other outside of the club. So in this club of the Optimist Club, we have several examples of how we connect with one another. And then I talk about listening actively. I'm going to focus on two folks who've been here. Jill Conrath spoke to us last winter, and she brought up on working with others and listening actively, asking open-ended questions, summarizing, paraphrasing, and empathizing. And if you were at that session, you heard her talk about being a 16-year-old girl and this guy she thought was really hot, who was an athlete. He was smart, he was good looking, and she wanted to impress him. So she went to her friends and said, this guy's inviting me to McDonald's. What do I do? And Jill shared with us that she wrote out 10 questions to just ask the guy questions. And they're sitting at McDonald's out in the car, and she forgot what questions to ask about halfway through. So she excused herself and went to the restroom and looked up her questions and came back and asked more questions. And at the end of this date, he gave her a ride home. And this guy said, wow, you were so much fun. This is one of the best dates I've ever been on. I want to go out with you again. And then she thought about this and said, the one thing I didn't think about was the element on compassion and interaction. But I actually said, I don't want to go out with that guy again because he didn't ask a question of me or anything. So that's a lesson to be learned with how you can listen actively, but you're hoping there's going to be some interaction back. It's not about me. It's all about we. It starts with me, but there needs to be some interaction back. And Manny Style, I want to point out to you his book, Listening Leaders. I bought his book. I've read his book. In the back of his book, he's got this great little, you probably can't see this well, but he's got this great pyramid back here. And he has 3 different groups of 3 that all come to taking meaningful action as step number 10 with his listening leaders, the 10 golden rules to listen, lead, and succeed. And I'm not going to tell you what the SEER model is. I'm going to say, you need to buy the book and find out for yourself. But I appreciate the ASK model, which is attitude and skills and knowledge. And the most important element is the attitude and 4 purposes for communication. Now, I'm not going to give you more than that because I want you to buy the book, but he's got some great ideas in here relative to listening. And then the third element, again, of the collaboration effect. So we've talked about connecting relationships, listening actively, is educating judiciously, if I can keep these slides going the right way. Oh, I'm sorry, bear with me here. Well, for some reason, I'm not getting the mouse to go to the one I want on educating judiciously. But when I think about, I'll just leave this here. But when I think of educating judiciously, again, I think of our club. And look how we are educating each other and the positive impact that has on us and on our family and our friends and our community as we come to sessions like this and we can educate and learn from one another. And hopefully we learn in ways that can help us going forward. Okay, now relative to Manny's book, and I've got to move something that popped up here. He has 3 primary components, which are preparation, priorities, and practices. And I like it because I like to think in 3s. And underneath each of these 3 are 3 parts. And I'm not going to read those to you, but these are the 3 parts he has under each of these 3 areas, which again leads to this 10th golden rule, which is then you're going to take action to make this happen. Oh, now I get educating judiciously pops up the other direction. Okay, so that I'm sorry. I'm glad you have a sense of humor, folks. And Terry has said we're not having enough humor. Well, Mike giving a presentation at his son's house in his office with this mouse and say, I've never worked with before. You can chuckle about and you'll remember this one. Okay, but John Baker, he also spoke to us and he talked about educating judiciously. And I love this. I now incorporate this in what I do. He said, know what you want, ask for it, and have 3 reasons why it's beneficial for them. Now I've incorporated that into my marketing scheme, and this works. And then I've also incorporated this in the areas where I'm involved with not-for-profits. And I'm just going to share, this really works. This is a great book that he shared with us in a presentation. It was in January or February of last year. But you know, sometimes we get together with people and it's not that we don't like them. It's that they're still good people. We know that, but they can be really hard to work with. And I put this guy's face here because I want to point out it's not about beliefs. It's all about values. And this guy has values too. I don't know what they are, but I need to work with him if I have to work with him to understand that person's values. And we can find ways to connect with each other. He wants me to be straightforward. He wants me to be open. He wants me to be accepting of him. He expects me to be responsible to work with him. He wants to build trust with me if we're going to go forward. But that's the kind of stuff that we need to do if we're going to try and collaborate with one another. And in that sense, I need to get to know the values that he and I have in common. So to work with others whom you disagree, you should focus on what? Beliefs, differences, values, or negative self-talk. To work with others whom you disagree, you should focus on beliefs, differences, values, or negative self-talk. And the answer is values. We don't want to focus on beliefs. If you take the example what the governor did with the legislature when they brought up issues relative to what are we going to do to address unwanted childbirths in our society here in Minnesota. And he brought on board a facilitator. And you know where the folks stood who said, I'm pro-abortion and anti-abortion. And they didn't get into abortion. They said, what are we going to do to help prevent unwanted pregnancies and to bring children into this world where they're going to have a home? And a home means it's not a house. It means a loving environment. It means they have enough food to eat. They can get medical care. They can go to a doctor when they need to. And they're in a nurturing environment, which is part of early childhood and family education, which I didn't realize that's only here in Minnesota. We're the only state that has the early childhood and family education program. So you don't focus on beliefs, you focus on values, and they got a lot done by doing that with the leadership in the House, the Senate, and the governor. And we want to emphasize on what we do agree on, rather than differences. What is it we do agree on? And again, focusing on values, and give yourself positive self-talk. I mean, as you're going through this can be very frustrating. It can be irritating to yourself. But by giving yourself positive self-talk, you can help promote yourself to keep on going. But I also need to share with you, you can't push a rope. You can only pull a rope. So if someone says, I don't want to work with you, and they say, talk to the hand, I don't want to work with you, accept that. When I started my own business now, almost 10 years ago, I got myself a half dozen mentors. And one of my mentors said, Mike, you need to get in front of 3 people. You need to call 3 people every day and get in front of 5 people every week. And I said, holy smokes, get in front of 5 people every week. How do I do that? And he helped me. And he said, Mike, try and reach out to them. And again, I'm a simple guy. Try and reach out to them 3 times. So we found a market group for me to reach out to based on my specialties. And what I did is I called the person. I usually left a message. They couldn't pick them up. And then what I did is I found out their email and I sent them an email. And then the third thing I did is I wrote them a handwritten note. And if after those 3 things they never responded back to me, move on, because they don't want to work with you. But most of the time I would get a response back because I reached out to them 3 times. But I also had to realize if they don't want to work with me, don't take that personally, simply just move on. And when we're involved with others, it can become frustrating, but we need to work on de-escalation. And one of the things that I've done is I've given you a handout that you received ahead of time. And that handout has some de-escalation ideas on it. And the de-escalation ideas are, don't take it personally. You decide whether to get angry or not. Use this active listening. Ask questions. Be curious. Suspend your own judgments. Slow down. I tend to talk fast. I'm an excitable, passionate guy. When I go into a mediation, I pray beforehand. And I center myself with the prayer of St. Francis of Assisi by praying that several times. And I slow down because I'm there for them. And when you're involved with this, you want to be empathetic. Be aware of emotional triggers and don't trigger theirs, and don't let them trigger you. And you'll be able to do that with positive self-talk to yourself, to not let yourself get angry. and always be courteous, the simple things of being polite, and work with the other party to say yes. I was involved with a very major difference between the IRS and a taxpayer, amounted to $1.6 million in additional tax. And we worked through the elements of connecting relationships and listening actively and educating judiciously. And in educating judiciously, 8 times we got the IRS to say, yes, that would tend to be more in your favor. And then a question was asked to the IRS. And the question was, you were at 10%. We were originally at 30%, but our experts said the answer was 30 to 35%. We took the lower number of 30%. Based on what we presented to you, we got the IRS to say yes 8 times. It would tend to be a higher number. We now think the right number would be 35%, but what do you think? And the IRS said, could you live with 34%? And the taxpayer's attorney said, yes. Well, this attorney got so excited, instead of paying $1.6 million, they got a $400,000 refund and said, come out and talk to my law firm about what we did here. And I did. I spoke to about half of their attorneys. It was in Boston. And then some of those attorneys had gone to Harvard. There's a club in Boston called the Harvard Club. And they invited me out there, and I've been back there now the 2nd time. And I've gone through additional examples and information on how this works. But this collaboration effect saved that firm about $2 million. And I'm not saying it because of that was a big dollar amount. I'm pointing out it's connecting relationships, listening actively, educating judiciously, and then that leads to negotiating closure going forward. But we sometimes need to make sure we're de-escalating ourselves through this process. Now your screen's deliberately blank. I want to ask you a question. How many sides are there to a coin? Think about that. How many sides are there to a coin? And you can decide and tell me what your number is, but most people say 2, some people say 3, and the right answer is 3. There's a heads, a tails, and the side of the coin. And along those lines, that's the way it is in a conflict. There's my side, there's your side, and there's the truth. What we're trying to do is figure out what really is the truth. We have our biases that have each told us we're right. And once we start to understand and learn from each other, we can address those going forward. And then in terms of communication, I'm bringing up my phone. Now this is not communication, it's the attitude in communication, the attitude in communication. 10% of the attitude is with the words. So 10% is with the words. So think of a text or an email, 10% of the attitude. I'm sorry, not 10, 7% of the attitude is with the words. But 38%, these are again averages in longer term studies, not just every conversation, but 38% has to do with the tone. So at least if we pick up the phone and we're talking to somebody else, I'm picking up now 45% of the attitude. But if I can see you face to face and I can see your body language and I can see your face, that's 55%. Now, the whole time I'm talking with you, note, I'm now backing up in the room. Now you can see my body more than you could before. And now that you can see my body more, you can see when I talk with you, I use my hands. But the whole time I've been talking with you, you've only seen me from here up. So a virtual is better than talking on the phone, and it's better than just a text, but clearly face-to-face is the best way to go. Now I'm a baby boomer. And for baby boomers, we were taught you have a conflict, you get in front of the other person, and you want to make sure you could see that body language and facial expression, hear those words. But now I'm going to take you on a generational difference. I'm going to take you into a Z or a young millennial. So a Z is somebody who's about 18 and younger. And a millennial is somebody who's a little older than that, can go all the way up to almost 40. So there's a wide range of millennials, but the younger millennials, the average millennial picks up this phone 150 times a day. And their preferred method is to text. Think about that. Preferred method generationally is to text. So there's an opportunity to help educate when we have some conflict with one another. Can we pick up the phone? Or to send a text and say, could you please call me? And could we set up even a Zoom meeting with someone we're in conflict with? I've got a whole session on generational differences that's entirely different from today. But the point is, you want to, again, educate them the way they want to be educated. But sometimes in terms of listening, we need to look at which method we're using and why, and work towards one where we can see each other and hear each other. And in terms of listening actively, I'll just tell you a story. I was a new manager, and I'd managed a group for about a year, and I had nine employees, 1 gal and 8 guys. And I took over a new group, and that group had 7 people in it, 6 gals and 1 guy. And about 2 weeks into that new management group, I said to one of the employees, Gail, I said, Gail, I know something isn't quite right, but I can't put my finger on this. And Gail was a very open person. So I said, Gail, can you help me out with this? Gail looked down and face got kind of red, and she said, well, Mike, there's times we come in your office, all we want you to do is just listen. And I said, I'm a guy, I'm thick, I don't get it. I don't know when you come in and ask a question, when you want me to listen, and when you come in, you actually want me to give you an answer. And I was also not the sharpest knife in the drawer as being a manager at that point. So I always thought my role is to answer questions. I didn't realize if I can help them answer the questions, that would be far more beneficial. I didn't realize that at the time. So I'm sitting here so I brought this up with Gail, and I said, I'm going to bring it up in a group meeting. So I brought it up in a group meeting, and the group, I think, felt sorry for me, but they said, I tell you what, Mike, when we come to your door, we're going to knock on the side of the door. And if we say blue, that means we want you to listen. Okay. So I'm sitting away here. I'm typing away my keypad, looking at my monitor up there. And there's a knock at the door and somebody says blue. I grab a notepad. I grab a pen. I slide on my rolling chair over to a little round table, I should say. There are 2 chairs at that table and I can slide into it. And I grab my pad of paper and my pen. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to listen. And I'm going to paraphrase and summarize and ask open-ended questions and empathize. I'm writing this down. I'm going back over what I heard. And 9 times out of 10, my employee figured it out. And when they left, they remembered it. And they did it. And they felt really good about that. And as a manager, it actually reduced how much time people came and talked to me because they began to do it themselves, knowing when I go to ask Mike and I ask him to listen, this is what he's going to do. So let me think about that myself. It reduced my own workload. Well, this was such an aha moment. I got excited. I came home. I saw my wife, Roma, and I said, Roma, I want to tell you about this and about listening, how effective this is. And my wife looked at me and said, you can do that at home too. Well, I'm just sharing with you, that was money in the bank. This listening thing is money in the bank. So I'm really encouraging you to do what now to actively listen? What did that involve? And if I can get one slide to come forward, and I'm not getting one slide to come forward. It was about paraphrasing, summarizing, asking open-ended questions, and empathizing. So what is it that we've just emphasized here with this collaboration effect? What we've just emphasized is it's all about connecting relationships, number 1. Number 2, listening actively. And number 3, educating judiciously. And what does this do? This leads to building bridges and negotiating closure. Well, I want to help you with this going forward. So one of my books is called The Collaboration Effect, and we're going to give some of these away in a few minutes. But there's a pocket guide that if we were in person, I'd give you one of these. And it's a trifold. That's why I call it a pocket guide. It's got something on the front and back. It fits in your pocket like this. But it's hard to read that. So I've just taken this pocket guide that's been sent out to you, and I've blown it up a little bit. And on the one side, I'm not going to go over all this with you, but on the one side, on the left over here, you can see it's got connecting relationships and how to do that. Listening actively. Listen with 100% attention. Ask open-ended questions. Check for understanding. And there are other things on here, what you can do with interest-based solutions, and some of the key terms are listed here too. But the next page, this goes into greater detail. Some questions to ask about connecting relationships. Some listening questions to ask. And that on the left-hand side where it says listening actively, that's my number 1 question. What would you like to have happen? What would you like to have happen? When I was working with a gang leader, these folks had killed each other on both sides. And I had to ask that question maybe a dozen times in different ways. And finally, I got to what this person would really like to have happen. So whether it's a tough situation like that, it's something at work, it's something at home, work with others to listen actively and ask these questions. And on the center column, be tough on the problem, always be gentle on the people. One time I was in an adult education class, a religious class, and I referred to someone as being a jerk. And the teacher pointed out to me, Mike, the person's a child of God, but they do jerky behaviors sometimes. So the person's not a jerk. The person did jerky behavior. That resonated with me. This is now over 30 years ago. Be tough on the problem, be gentle on the people. Acknowledge your emotions and theirs without blame. The phrase I like to use is don't use BO or BS. And BO is don't blame others, and BS is don't blame self. Don't blame anybody. Treat others as they would like to be treated. In the middle section, positions polarize, interests integrate, and very importantly, behind every position is at least one interest. We need to work together to find those interests, and the interests are what hold the seeds to a solution. So I'm encouraging you, print that out, and sometime when we're together, I'll just bring 100 of these to one of our Optimist clubs, and you can all have one of these. I'll give you one to stick in your pocket. So now you know all about this. You know about connecting relationships, the collaboration effects about connecting relationships, listening actively, and educating judiciously. And what that does is it leads to building bridges and negotiating closure. But I have some bonus items for you. Now this one, I got to thank Dr. Terry Wu. I listened to him a week ago or so in a 1-hour session, and I'm a simple guy. So after I attend something, I do take notes. And after I take notes, I write down to me the key points. And I'm going to think about this. I'm at my son's house right now. He's downstairs in a nearly finished basement. He started this last spring. He's now got a bathroom down there, a bedroom, a big walk-in closet, and a big family room downstairs. So think what we did is we planned that, he planned that out, and I was his Joe Cool guy that I'm his servant to do what he asks me to do. And I've renovated 2 houses in South Minneapolis and 1 here in Roseville. But today, I don't have to go get a Time Life book and try to read a book and figure out how to do it. Today, you can see all this stuff on your phone on how to do things, and they do a much better job of teaching, and the techniques are much better. So we worked on that basement. And now I thought about working on that basement with what's right here. You need a sense of control to reduce stress. And are you helping others to have a sense of control? You need to be able to predict what we're going to do, how we're going to do this. You need to see progress and make progress. Again, think about that with my son in his basement over the past year. Learning something new. I learned all sorts of techniques that enhanced what I had known previously, even putting on a joint compound. We did this together. He's pointing out to me things he found on YouTube so I could do a better job than what I'd been doing previously. And we did electrical, we did plumbing, we did all sorts, just put in flooring. And then you need positive stress outlets. We talked about those, mindfulness and exercise. I'm telling you, if you renovate a basement, that's a lot of exercise. So I'm thinking of, without me really knowing this from neuroscience, we did all these things over this past year to reduce stress without making a conscious effort to reduce stress. This was just what we did to reduce our own stress. Thank you, Dr. Terry Wu, for bringing this together and emphasizing that that's what we can all do to reduce stress. And then I want to give you one other bonus. There's a course offered from Yale. It's on happiness. It's free. You can go online and download this course. But this course on happiness, based on neuroscience, has 5 points to it. The first is gratitude for 5 minutes a day, and you'll produce chemicals and hormones that stay with you throughout the day. Think about that for us optimists here. Is that cool or what? Well, this has actually been around from the Greater Good Science Center for over 10 years. The class has been at Yale now for about 3 years. And the president at Yale said they offer this 1-credit class and over half the students take it because these are the leaders for tomorrow and they want them to do these things. But for me, I start every day with my gratitude. When I come in to brush my teeth and get ready for the day, when I take off my glasses like this, I am legally blind. So when I go to the optimists, when I go to the optometrists and they say, can you read that letter? I'll say, I can't read it, but I know it's the letter E. Okay, I know that. So what that means is when I look in the mirror at myself in the morning like this, I can't see. So you know what? I think I look pretty good. I can smile at myself in the mirror and I at least can see that I'm smiling. I can't tell anything else. But by having this gratitude and just, it doesn't matter what you think about, but whatever you think about, that can help you for 8 to 10 hours have a better day. And then it says label negative feelings. In the class, that means they keep a journal of negative feelings. And I just say, if someone sends you an email that's negative, open a Word document, don't respond. Jot what your feelings are in that Word document, save it, come back the next day, delete it if you want to, modify it and make it neutral. consider taking major points to write back in a neutral fashion to whoever you're working with. Know you made the best decision you could every day and just let it go at the end of the day. Realize that. For me, that's prayer. But for you, know you made the best decision every day and let it go. Appropriate touch with others. We're looking forward to getting back to having physical presence, shaking hands, giving a hug. For me, I'm very fortunate. I have my wife, and we give hugs every day. And I'd say since COVID, those hugs have become longer. It's appropriate to have touch with others, or if you don't have others, do you have a pet? And my son has 2 dogs that are down in the basement right now, but when I come over, those dogs, they love me. And think of the love that I can give back to them. And finally, meditation, prayer, reflection, 10 minutes a day, clear that prefrontal cortex. This is that course on happiness. That's the second bonus. And then I have one other bonus. When we think of collaboration, I think of Don Salverda, and I think of this club. He reached out to me in the fall of 2019 and encouraged me to join this club. One of the best things I've ever done. And if there's a guy who he has a goal for this year, and his goal going forward is legacy. Legacy. And I want to help him with his legacy. That think of what he's done for us in this club. How many of us got a call from Don Salverda to be here today? And he is on top of this with the newsletter and calling and being a conscientious, positive reinforcer with each one of us. So my third bonus is we all owe a big hand to Don Salverda. So I'd like you to just take about 10 seconds. I want us all go to the gallery view, and I'd like us all to applaud Don Salverda and say, thank you very much, Don Salverda, for making us what we are with this club. He is the man. Terry's our president, but Don Salverda, he is the man. So with that, I'm now going to give away 4 books. And Terry Gorman is the guy who's going to make this happen. And the book on the left, the first one, and the book on the right are the same book. And I don't know anything about distribution, but my publisher or my distributor said the one on the left is the Kindle book, and the one on the right is the hard copy book. They're the same book, but for marketing purposes, they look different on covers. But I'm going to give away 4 hard copy books. And Terry's going to get your name after the session, your name and address and phone number, and I'll make sure they get delivered to you. So the first book is The Collaboration Effect by Mike Gregory. And Terry, who's going to get that book? He's done a random drawing of this.
Yes, we've had a random drawing while you were speaking, Mike, and working with Patty Sagert. And
I have the winners.
And a winner. So Patty, give us a winner. Give us that first winner on the first book, please.
The first winner of Mike's book is Scott Plum. Scott, you are the first winner.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks, Michael.
All right. Way to go, Scott.
And our next winner, the second book winner, is Dan Stoltz. So Dan Stoltz from Spire Credit Union. Dan, you are our second winner.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Let me
Thanks,
pause.
Michael.
You're welcome. You're welcome, Dan. This book is 100 Habits from the Happiest Achievers on the Planet. I'm just a contributor. And my contributor in that book was just this comment we had on gratefulness at the start of the day. That's that book. Okay. Third book.
Khadija Zieg. Khadija Zieg is our third winner.
Okay. Congratulations.
Congratulations, Khadija.
Okay. And I'm just
Thank
going to
you
comment.
so much.
You're welcome. This book is 1 Habit for a Thriving Home Office. I'm just a contributor in the book, but in this book, it came out in July of last year. It was the #1 book on Amazon of all books, regardless of category, on new books in the month of July of 2020. And the last book is A Collaboration Effect. And who's that going to go to, Patty?
Our last book, Mike, is going to none other than Kyle Bartholomew.
All right, Kyle Bartholomew.
So I'm not sure. I think if you are not a member, or if you would do us a favor, even if you are a member, would you please send a private message? You can send it to me if you'd like, or to Terry with the mailing address. And we will be happy to work with Mike and get you a collective list, Mike, of the winners to send out those books. Thank you for your generosity, and happy reading, the 4 of you.
And I would just say also include your phone number, because if you're local, I'm going to hand deliver these. If you're not
Nice.
local, I'm going to put them in the mail. But otherwise, I'd make an arrangement to swing by and drop it off at your home or business at some point in the future. And thank you very much, Patty, and thank you very much, Terry.
Thank you very much, Mike. Manny, do you have a couple of comments? If you can unmute yourself here as we're getting to it. And Mike, if you'd put down your share, that'd be great.
And I want to thank all of you for your patience with me with the technical difficulty with me losing my internet and cable this morning and working this with my son's house and with his mouse. You were a very patient and understanding audience. Thank you very much. Any questions or comments? And I'm just going to pass this back to Terry.
I'm going to hand it to Manny just to make a couple comments. And maybe we do have some questions. Is there some questions in the audience out there? If there is, please raise your hand, and we'll try to catch some of those questions for you, Mike.
Thank you.
Well, first of all, let me just say thanks to Michael. He's a deep well. And one of the challenges in these presentations is he covers a lot of material, but he has a whole lot more to share with you. So on his behalf, although I haven't asked him, I would ask you, don't hesitate to contact Michael. You will be well rewarded if you have opportunity to communicate with him. And thank you, Michael. Appreciate your input here today. Terry, back to you.
Okay, I see we have a couple questions. Dave Bartholomew. Dave, question, please.
Sure. Well, first, I just want to say thanks to Mike. I've known Mike for many years. It's always interesting when you have a leader in the field who happens to live in your metro area or in your community. So he helps out with tough things like when we had Philando Castile killed in Falcon Heights and stuff. He comes in and works with people, talks with people, and you're thinking, he's just a regular great community member. And then, of course, you start unpeeling that onion a few years ago and you start realizing, wow, he's written 12 books. He's a national force. And so I just think we're so lucky to have you around, Mike, and thanks for a great presentation.
I see next we have Ed Stadinsky. Ed, if you'd have a comment or a question, please.
Yeah, I do. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate you coming here, and I appreciate the nice words you said about Don. Don had invited me to present my lessons learned a few months back to the Optimist group, and one of the things that generated maybe the most discussion afterwards is my statement that there's only one truth. And so I found your coin analogy interesting, and I'd like you to comment. Is there more than one truth, Mike?
Well, what I hear you asking is a philosophical question. And what I'm doing is mine is a little bit different than that philosophical question of yours. And mine is when we have two folks and they each have a difference of opinion, it's important to understand why they have that opinion. And in that sense, I mediate. I've done some 2,500 mediations over my career. And I've always found that people come in with a view that the world is a 0-1. And I'm a 0 and you're a 1, or other way around. And when you begin to ask people questions, which is what I do as a mediator, they begin to look at the world and they say, I've got some assumptions behind what I've presented. I have my way that I looked at it like this, and now I'm starting to look at it like that. So those positions that they had, they begin to move in an area that the world's a little grayer than they thought on the black and white once they begin to understand more. And sometimes they can move into what's called a zone of possible agreement between those two. Sometimes they can only get so far. But even when that happens, what I find in business is business likes closure, especially the C-suite people, the CFOs, the CEOs, the CIOs, the COOs. They want closure. Oftentimes in business, the vice presidents may have perspectives tied to their bonuses or other elements that they know their world and they want their world to win. But the C-suite people will come back in and say, we need to find ways to bridge those differences between the entities. So when I say it's important to understand that our focus is they each had a perspective of what they viewed to be the truth. But if we work together and ask the appropriate questions and give them a neutral environment that's confidential to work in, oftentimes we can bridge those differences and find a way to resolve that, whether it goes 90-10 or 10-90 or anywhere in between. But your comment on there's only one truth, that's a different perspective on a philosophical of what's important in life. I kind of tie that back into Tom Winninger's book, Your True DNA, and what's important to you, and what's your own personal statement of what you do. Does that provide maybe a difference of how you look at this, Ed?
Yeah, it does. It sounds like when you're bringing the two together, though, you don't necessarily get them to settle on the truth or the edge of the coin. Is that,
Well,
is that true?
when you bring the two together in a mediation, as a mediator, I don't make the decisions. If I was an arbitrator makes a decision like a judge. But in mediation, the parties make the decision. And sometimes that's a win-win, and sometimes it's something that you can live with.
Sure.
Which is not necessarily the ideal situation, but you can live with this going forward for closure.
Thanks.
Sure.
Great, thank you. We have another question, last one from John Seavold.
Thank you, Mike. You just answered most of my question, but you had mentioned earlier that you had worked with gangs, and I'm just kind of curious. What approach do you take with a group that you might not be as familiar with, versus like a corporate executives?
Well, I've also mediated with different cultures. So when I'm involved with a different culture, I always bring on someone else with me. So I'm a white male, upper middle class guy. I would like to have a female of color if I can, and someone who maybe is aware of the culture that's not my culture. And in those situations, it's a different environment, but everyone wants respect. Everyone wants to be listened to. And these things don't just happen in a one-time session. There's a book out there called 3 Cups of Tea. It was written about buildings from it's Morrison. I remember it's Gregory Glenn Morrison. He's from Roseville originally, but the 3 Cups of Tea dealt with building schools in Afghanistan. That was his goal. And he found in Afghanistan, it's impolite to bring up anything in business until you've sat down with the person 3 times and had tea. So the book is called 3 Cups of Tea. So when you're working with some folks outside your culture, it's important to understand their culture, and you're there to learn. Oftentimes we think we're coming in to tell them what to do. I found, for example, working with the poor, it's important for me to understand where they're coming from and what's important to them. And the same thing is true with, I'll say, working with gangs. It's important for me to understand where they're coming from. And they're people, and they have values. And we need to understand those values. So a large part of that is upfront, what's involved with understanding values that we have in common. Like I said, respect and understanding and listening and caring and being straightforward and being open and being accepting. And they look at me too as, hey, this is some white guy, what does he know? So I need to be in a mindset that I'm here to learn. I'm not here to tell anybody anything. I'm here to learn. And when they finally realize they have someone they can listen to and that I really care and I want to see them succeed, that goes a long way towards building trust. Trust is the underlying foundation of everything I do. So I'm not sure I'm fully answering your question, but I hope that helps.
Great. Well, Mike, thank you very much for being here today. It's been wonderful. We've really enjoyed it. I want to remind folks that we have included in the link today as a couple of add-ons or attachments to your email, the 10 steps to de-escalation and your collaborative effect little pocket guide, so people can look at that. And I really want to say thank you again. This has been tremendous. These 10 steps, I've looked them over, and I think that you really show optimism. And particularly today, you were really showing don't let anything disturb your peace of mind. And we have a plaque for you, which we'll get to you, Mike, a little later. But thank you very much for everything you've done for us today. We really appreciate you as a member. You are really showing the optimism, and let's give him a big round of applause. And thank you so much.
Thank you.